Hello everyone, welcome to the Bizarre Ones podcast, and I'm your host Kai.
And I'm your host, Diamond Ash.
And of course, I'm Tanya Kitsune, your third co-host, if you will.
And of course, in this episode of Bizarre Ones podcast, we're going to be looking at some of the strangest, craziest, bizarre stories that we could find, if you will, and, react to that kind of content. So let's just jump right in to the podcast. So this first story, if you will, is there's this Thai woman, right? And she swallowed a fish bone. It got stuck in her throat, and it eventually pierced her neck after she failed to remove it.
Wait, so Kai, you're saying that she had this fish bone in her neck. How exactly did that happen, if you will? How did exactly... What was she eating fish or what?
Okay, so I'll get to that. So she posted the photos on Facebook with a sharp white needle piercing her skin from underneath. It was posted to warn people to be careful when eating fish. She had been eating a fish soup when she accidentally swallowed the fish bone when she felt a sharp pain in her neck.
In all honesty, fish soup doesn't sound that appetizing. But then again, I'm not a person that's really big into fish. In general, there is some fish that'll eat salmon and tuna and whatnot, but other than that, I'm just not really that kind of girl that really is into fish,
Yeah, I get that. I'm not really much of a fish person. I'll eat the same fish you mentioned, sometimes catfish, depending on who cooks it and who makes it, so I totally get that. And fish in a soup, I don't know, just doesn't sound like something that's that appealing, if you will. So she had been eating the fish soup, right? She tried dislodging the bone using folk remedies like eating rice and bread crust, but nothing worked.
I've never heard that remedy of using that. You think the best thing to do would be to visit the doctor as soon as you're have this kind of issue, if you ask me. That's just my personal opinion.
Oh, I totally agree with you. You'd think that would be the first solution to the particular instance. So, surprise, surprise, none of these folk remedies worked. I mean, obviously they wouldn't. But again, it was in Thai, and I guess, they're in their culture, they don't go to the doctor first. I'm not sure. Or maybe she's superstitious or something else. But anyway, she went to the hospital, but the x-ray didn't reveal anything. She felt pain in her throat following the x-ray. Life went on, and she got used to the pain after a while, and she thought it would heal eventually.
I'm pretty sure that was very painful to continue just dealing with it and whatnot. You're I'm not gonna go to the doctor even though I'm in the serious pain and whatnot, but I mean, the doctors couldn't find anything and they sent her on her way home and oh yeah, nothing's wrong with you, you're good, instead of listening to her that something was wrong. But that sounds like your typical, medical system, if you will, when a woman goes to the doctor and she's hey, there's something totally wrong with me, and oh no, just get over it and deal with it and move on. It's just such bullshit.
Yeah, I get that. 2 weeks later, she had noticed her neck had become swollen from where the fishbone was, right? And she thought it was a condition linked to her thyroid condition. So apparently she had already had a medical condition with her thyroid, and she thought that that's what was going on. A second doctor also performed an x-ray, but still nothing. And it seems in this particular situation, she keeps on going, right, to the doctor, and keeps on getting the x-ray, one x-ray, and that's it. And the doctor's okay, go home, instead of doing multiple tests in order to figure out what was going on. I mean, it sounds I don't know how she doesn't have a medical malpractice lawsuit with this particular thing, to be honest, And anyways, the second doctor prescribed medicine and painkillers. At home, when applying a pain relief patch on her neck, she noticed a pointy needle against her neck from underneath. After applying pressure, the needle pierced her skin. So that she went back to the hospital for a third time, and the doctors finally managed to remove this 2-centimeter fish bone from her neck. After multiple doctor visits, they're oh yeah, you're right. There was something particularly wrong with you. We kept on sending you home only after doing one freaking x-ray.
They were totally in the wrong for only doing one x-ray. Like, who just does one x-ray? Who doesn't do that? I mean, is that how things work in Thailand? I mean, I guess that's sometimes how things work in the United States, where it's like, we're just going to do one x-ray. And it's like Tanya said, is maybe it's because she's a woman and they, have the same sexist patriarchal healthcare system that we have, where women's pain is ignored, and they go to a doctor and they say, I'm in pain, I'm feeling pain, and they're like, no, nothing's wrong with you, here's some painkillers, shut the fuck up and just go. And it's like, no, I'm in pain. And it's like, after 3 times, they finally listened to her.
I'm pretty sure that she will be more careful next time she eats soup now, when it comes to the fish bones. Or she just might not eat fish soup again because of that particular instance. I know I personally probably wouldn't be eating fish soup after that, because I'd be too scared that it was going to happen again and that no one was going to listen to me about what I was going through pain-wise.
Yeah, I'd probably stay away from like fish soup or fish in general for a long time after that, thinking that the same thing was going to happen again, I don't think I would trust fish soup for a while after that particular instance. So the second story that scientists at a lab at National University of Defense Technology unveiled a tiny insect-like drone for surveillance and reconnaissance missions. It was revealed to be the public on China's military channel. The drone has actual flapping wings and hair-thin legs and almost indistinguishable from real insects.
So, Kai, you're telling me that basically they came up with some James Bond kind of thing China did. That's actually some pretty cool tech, but it's very questionable because, what the military-industrial complex could do with that kind of technology, if you will.
Oh, I totally agree. Ash, as you don't know what, in the wrong hands, this kind of technology could be very dangerous. And I'm really curious of how realistic it actually looks to actual insects.
And I'm curious of how many years it took them to perfect this kind of technology, and what other countries are close to this kind of tech that this, defense company came up with. Like, is China the only one? And if not, how long has other countries had this kind of technology? And how many times have people ran into these kind of drones and not even realized it? It just has some scary implications.
Totally. You both bring up really good points. Like, the implications of this kind of tech is very scary, and it's a new frontier, if you will, of drone technology, and it makes us do wonder how many other various countries have this tech and has been used, and we could have been just walking down a street and not even realize that drone technology was used. And in a country like the way the United States is headed, if they had this kind of tech, just the things that they could find out about us and use against us is really terrifying, if you will. So, I mean, the implications of it is kind of scary. And the potential could revolutionize various industry. It's being marketed for military purposes, which goes to, exactly what you two were saying of how this tech could be used in the wrong hands, if you will. And the drone measured only 1.3 centimeters and can be controlled using smartphones. So, I mean, it can be used with the kind of phone that we're literally recording this from exactly right now, if you will.
So that means, what if it falls into the wrong kind of hands, Kai, where somebody takes it and they, are very controlling X, right? And they want to spy on their ex, if you will, and find out what their ex is up to. This could be, really dangerous in that particular situation.
Yeah, you're totally right. You do have a point. It could be used by some stalker X and very dangerous. And so with technology, we're going towards this very dangerous precedent of unknown area, if you will. And we have to change as a society, really, as we progress with the technology, or somebody could use it for really bad things. Now, the manufacturers of this, they said that the leaf-like wings with 3 tiny legs, and it's more quiet than other drones, so you won't even hear it. And the creators of the drone believe it is hard to detect, can perform functions like reaching hard-to-reach spaces. It can monitor air quality with attached sensors, and battery life is limited, if you will.
I mean, I guess the question is how long the battery lasts, if you will, because if it doesn't last that long, then they couldn't really use it for long-term monitor surveillance. But I do like the concept of where it says it can monitor the air quality. So it could be used in situations where you're trying to find out in a natural disaster if the area is safe for humans. So it could be used in a good way instead of military purposes. It could be used for some kind of a search and rescue kind of thing as well. So it could be used for something good. It's just, it depends on the intention of the person that's using the technology, if you will, if it will be used for something bad or good. The technology itself isn't evil. It's the user of the tech, if you will, that makes it dangerous or not dangerous, you know?
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. It's the person with the tech that makes it, dangerous or not dangerous. And like you said, it could be used for emergency situations, like in case of the California fires a few months back or whenever that was. It could be used to monitor the air quality and be like, okay, this is now safe for humans to go in. And so we could send it into dangerous situations to where we wouldn't have to send humans, and we could actually minimize human casualties. So that was in China, right? Well, I got another story, a true story that's bizarre and strange that takes place in China. This Chinese city sets new world record with 11,787 drone lights for their drone light show. And so it's another thing with drones, but it's actually something that's cool and civilian-like, if you will, and not so much something to do with the military industrial purposes. So it's kind of cool. It's the, I'm not sure how to pronounce that city, Chongqing is the city where it happened, and it was more than 100,000 people showed up for the show. The drones illuminated the night sky. There were messages written to energize the people during the show. Some of the patterns the drones made were inspired by Chinese history and culture, if you will.
That's actually kind of cool, Kai, that, obviously China is not just using drones for military purposes. They're also revolutionizing drones when it comes to the entertainment sector as well.
Definitely, if you will. It seems to be that China is slowly becoming the leader in drone technology, or technology in general, and revolutioning technology for the future and where humans can go when it comes to technology and the various purposes that we can use it for. They're slowly becoming a world superpower, if you will, which is kind of cool. So there was colorful flowers, the detailed skylines, and local mascots. The movement of the drones had to be calculated to precision. They, even before performing, had to debug and rework. It was a show off the product to potential buyers. It was a showcase the strength in drone cluster tech and low altitude management. A hub for drone manufacturers, drone technology, and research are the ones that did this. And like I said, this is actually pretty cool and whatnot. And you can look up the footage, if you will, or check out the article that we'll put in the description for this particular episode of the podcast. And you can click on that link. And I think it might have video or some pictures of the drone show, if you will, if you want to take a look at that. So this next story takes place in Texas. This Texas man discovered his ex-fiance married him against his will. Yeah, you heard that right. If you will, this Texas man discovered that his ex-fiance married him against his will, and he didn't even know. So he broke up with the said woman to be discovered that she married him without his consent.
How exactly does that work? Like, how exactly do you marry somebody without that person knowing that, they got married? Like, usually you would think that the person would know that they got married, if you will. I mean, unless they were drunk.
Like, to go with what Ash is saying, I'm really curious of exactly how this person pulled off this. This seems really elaborate, if you will. Was it really elaborate, this whole entire thing, to make it look like that they were married? That's just wow.
It's definitely a wow situation. It's definitely a wow situation, because you would think most people would know that they got married, they would be there and kind of thing. And so I'm about to get to that, of how this person pulled off to make it look like she was married to this Texas man, right? Okay, so the man had never attended a marriage ceremony. The man is 42 years old, whose identity has remained not said in the article that I got this from. He admitted to having been in a committed relationship with the 36-year-old Kristen Marie Spearman. He visited a clerk office to get a marriage license. They never made it to the actual ceremony because they got into an argument. And the man ended the relationship with her, but she had other plans. Days after breaking up, he received a gift bag from Bath & Body, which contained products and a photo of his ex holding a marriage certificate saying they were married.
Exactly how did she pull that off? Like, he was like, you know what? I'm not going to get married to you. This is done and it's over with. And then somehow he gets this thing from Bath & Body and it's like, hey, congratulations on your marriage. And he's like, what?
Exactly. Like, he's like, wait, what? I'm married? Like, how the hell am I married? Like, how the hell did this happen without my knowing? And, I mean, days after breaking up, he receives this gift bag from Bath & Body, which contained, like, products and a photo of his ex holding a marriage certificate, and he's like, huh? Well, according to the county website where the man is from, the couple must show up in person and have a valid ID. I don't know why I said ID. But anyways, they have to have a valid ID. Somehow, Kristen managed to get a local pastor to certify the marriage, even though the groom wasn't there. She then took the license to the clerk's office and filed it. Spearman has been arrested and charged with third-degree felony stalking, if you will. So, I mean, he wasn't there, but somehow she convinced this pastor to, go ahead and go along with it.
Like, exactly how did she convince the pastor to do it? Was she like, oh, hey, pastor, we're like deeply in love, and he just couldn't make it because he was working really late, and that's the only reason he's not here. I'm not up to anything suspicious at all. And I think the pastor would probably feel guilty about the whole thing, that he performed this marriage ceremony and the groom wasn't there, and then this woman lied to him, and he's thinking, wow, why'd she come here to get married? Doesn't she realize, that lying is a sin, and she got married in the eyes of the Lord or whatnot, or whatever Christians call that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. The pastor probably would, like, later on was like, so she came to me and had her and the guy get married, and obviously she was lying to me. And I feel bad kind of for the pastor, and I'm not sure exactly if this pastor's a good person or not, but we're going to go out on a limb and assume he's a decent pastor and actually believes in what he preaches and whatnot. And this woman comes to him and completely lies. I'm pretty sure if that's like her pastor of the church she goes to, he's not going to believe her anymore. And he's going to be like, honey, you need to repent for what you have done. This is a sin before the eyes of the Lord, or, whatever.
Talk about like stalker behavior, if you will. Like, I've had a few stalkers in the past, if you will. And I know you have, Kai, and I'm not sure if Tanya has, but I've had stalkers in the past, and I thought my stalkers were bad. But thankfully, even though they were bad, they never somehow were able to get married to me without me knowing. Wow, that's just a crazy story. And I hope he's okay, and I hope she gets the help that she needs, because she's obviously psychologically messed up in the head.
Oh, yeah. Like, she's definitely messed up in the head. So this next story is about an angry beekeeper. This angry beekeeper set bees on police during a routine traffic stop. The suspect is a 70-year-old Spanish beekeeper. Police stopped the man, and when they did, they noticed he wasn't wearing a seatbelt and that he was driving erratically. Right away, the man threatened to run them over. So, like, right away, this whole entire, traffic stop is already getting out of control, and he's like telling them that he's going to run them over. And the conversation between the police and the 70-year-old man became even more heated. The police suspected the man was under the influence of alcohol. The police asked him to take a breathalyzer test, and he threatened to kill them. So, like, they say, hey, you need to take a breathalyzer, we need to see if you've been drinking, and the first thing he does is
try to threaten to run them over and kill them. Like, that is crazy, Guy. Like, the first thing he's he's been stopped by police, and they're being not in this particular situation. It sounds like they're being nice and decent with him, and he's like, I'm gonna try to run you over. And in this day and age, with the way that police officers are, he should be glad that nothing extremely bad happened, because there are a lot of bad police officers out there that are willing to do harmful things to people.
Definitely. Definitely he should be glad that these weren't some corrupt officers. I mean, police brutality towards civilians is at an all-time high, and so he should be glad that, these were not these kind of cops. And they suspected he was under the influence of alcohol. They asked him to take the breathalyzer. He threatened to kill them. Before they could react, he went to the back of his van and released the bees. The bees attacked the police, and when they were stung several times. The police were both allergic to the bees, apparently, and they had to flee the scene to take refuge in a nearby restaurant. The beekeeper got back in his van and he took off. The police called for reinforcement and after a while tracked the man down. The man was arrested but released on bail. The two policemen were taken to the ER and administered cortisol.
I wonder if the man was charged with assault. I mean, does that count as assault when you sick bees on people? I would assume, if you sicked your dog on somebody, that's assault. He first, threatened them. So he threatened a police officer, and then he was, released the bees on him, and then he basically resisted and evaded arrest. That's basically what he did. He did resist and evade arrest after he took off. So, I mean, he's got some serious charges going on, if you will, in this particular situation.
So, Kai, I got a story for you. There's this pink fridge in the Nambian Desert, right? And the Nambian Desert is the oldest and driest desert on Earth. The last thing that you would expect to find in this desert, obviously, is a pink. I don't know why I said sink. I'm having trouble with words just like you are, Kai, apparently, for this podcast. But anyways, the last thing you'd expect to find is a pink solar power fridge. But that's exactly what you'll find in this particular desert. It's near a metal table with two small chairs. And some might mistake it for a mirage, but it's real. Barbie-inspired fridge it is, and it is constantly restocked with drinks. Located about 20 minutes from the main road, the fridge was installed by the Nambian government tourist board. It was one of the most popular attractions in the country, or it is, not it was. It was designed as a modern take on the desert oasis for thirsty travelers. Travelers are allowed to take any items free of charge. It is restocked with various drinks such as bottled water and tea several times per day, and it is a perfect place to watch nature. But at the same time, you need to be careful if you're observing nature from there because it's very hot and whatnot. But that's why they have the fridge stocked with all kinds of various drinks and refreshments that you might need.
Okay, Ash, I'm looking at the photos that you sent of the fridge, if you will, and it looks so freaking cute. And I think that's really cool of the government. They really care about their people, it seems, or at least in this particular situation. I don't know much about that area, but the fact is they obviously don't want them to die from dehydration in that area that they installed a fridge. And so I think it's pretty cool. And the fridge, like I said, from the pictures that you just sent me through the email, it looks really cute.
Yeah, I also see the pictures and whatnot. Oh, if people are wondering, we're basically talking on the phone while we're doing this podcast, and then later on I'm putting it together, if you will, the podcast, the audio clip, so it's all together in one continuous audio stream, if you will, because we don't do this live at all. We pre-record it, because why would we do the podcast live? You don't have to do a podcast live, and we've never done the podcast live, if you will. But yeah, I mean, you guys said, it's really cool that they have this particular fridge there, if you will, out in the middle of nowhere, because what if somebody somehow gets out there and they don't have no way back, and it keeps them hydrated and keeps them from being dehydrated until they could get some help if they called for help and whatnot. It's pretty cool of that particular government in that area to do that, to make sure that the people that are out there stay hydrated and nobody dies from dehydration.
So, if you will, I got a story as well that I'd like to share with you all, since, Kai, you said that me and Diamond Ash could both, bring some stories for this podcast, if you will, that it didn't just have to be you do the research. So I have there's this woman who crashes funerals and whatnot, and she was crashing the funerals to hook up with the undertaker that she had seen at multiple funerals, and she was like, you know what, I want to be with that guy. He's cute and adorable and all that other stuff. So she kept on crashing the funerals, if you will. She's a Brazilian woman, and she spent 2 years attending funerals to catch the eyes of the undertaker. The Undertaker, Yellow Signor, and Apollo Scariot ended up marrying. She first laid eyes on him in 2023 while attending the funeral of a loved one, and every 3 months or so, she would attend funerals to try to catch his attention, and after a while, she finally got his attention, and they got married.
That's a very interesting love story, if you will. Like, a very interesting story, at least, if they have kids later to explain how they met. So, I mean, it's different, and I don't think I would crash funeral myself to meet a significant other and whatnot, but, to each their own, if you will. When it comes to that kind of situation, you never know where you'll find love.
Oh, exactly, Kai. You never know where you'll find somebody that, you connect with on a personal, deep, and spiritual level, if you will. So it is a very interesting story, if you will, and very unique love story that they can pass from their children to their grandchildren of how they met.
So this next story is another unique situation, if you will. This woman did 7,079 push-ups in 24 hours. 34-year-old Australian Olivia Vinson. She's an Australian fitness enthusiast, and her achievement began as a proposition by her husband, who's also her coach. And she trained for 3 months before taking on the challenge. She attempted the challenge multiple times and pulled a bicep tendon. After healing for a few months, she made another attempt. The original record was 4,081 before her record at 7,079 pull-ups. For the average person, doing over 4,000 pull-ups in 24 hours sounds impossible. But the previous record of 4,081 had been set by Paula Gorlo in Poland in 2021. And then the 7,079 pull-ups in 24 hours, or an average of about 5 pull-ups every minute, every 24 hours for this particular person. That's how she able to pull up the pull-ups.
Kai, I don't think I could do that many pull-ups in that short of a time. I can barely do a pull-up, in general.
I wouldn't consider myself out of shape or anything like that, but I doubt that I could do that many pull-ups in that amount of time as well. And I'm not really good with pull-ups or push-ups. Like, there's other, exercises that I can do somewhat decent at, but I definitely could not do that amount of pull-ups. That woman is like, damn, how did you do that, girl? Like, bravo. Talk about being, like, physically fit. Like, she would probably be the walking embodiment of physical fitness.
Definitely. I would agree that she'd have to be the walking embodiment of physical fitness, and I'm pretty sure she could whoop my ass. Sorry, guys. Sorry. I'm just saying. Damn. Okay, so the next story is this Japanese researcher published a small study about a VR game that can improve eyesight. So you know how they always tell us that, video games are not good for your eyesight, right? They tell us this, that, video games are not good for our eyesight. Well, researchers had a group of about 10 people to play this VR game at certain intervals over a period of 6 weeks. After analyzing the results, they concluded improvement of eyesight. The game used during the study required players to use their VR controllers to aim and shoot at circular targets, and apparently it actually improved their eyesight, which is interesting because, usually these kind of visual stimuli are not good for eyes, but this particular visual stimuli that was used in the research apparently is very good for our eyes. So, I guess video games aren't that bad depending on the video game when it comes to your eyesight. But you should still probably, not stare at your computer screen or television screen for too long. And now for our last story. It takes place in Massachusetts. This Massachusetts woman was relaxing in her hot tub, and she encountered and captured video of a mysterious object floating in the sky. Colleen McCormick was just relaxing when she saw it. She recorded it with her phone. She said it looked like it was on fire and was coming down fast. And one interesting fact, the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, said there are no reports of debris in the area or any kind of crash, if you will. So they're like, no, nothing happened there as far as we know. There's no instance of any particular crash. And so it makes you wonder what's going on.
Kai, it kind of reminds me of a while back with the drones, and the government's like, yeah, those aren't our drones. And it's like, wait, is this UFO activity? Is this UFO activity that you're telling us about? And they're like, It wasn't ours. I don't know what it is. And the fact that the FAA didn't know exactly, what was going on and what this particular thing was going on of what this woman saw, it's like, okay, then what did she see? Did she see a UFO? And the fact that it was on fire, does that mean a UFO came into our atmosphere and malfunctioning happened, and now it is fire and crashed? Have aliens landed on Earth? Is this another Roswell incident?
I wouldn't go that far to say it might be another Roswell incident. It could be another Roswell incident, or it could be a plane. It could be some kind of military craft, and they just don't want to tell us that it's some kind of military craft, and so they're just like not telling us of what's going on. And it makes you wonder exactly what she saw, since she captured it, the footage and whatnot, and she has the footage of this mysterious object that's on fire that fell from the sky. Could it be a meteorite as well, if you will, as well?
Also, Kai and Ash, it might not be a meteorite or a UFO. It could be another, a Starlink satellite of Elon Musk's, satellites falling out of the sky, because apparently you can't keep a goddamn satellite in the fucking sky, or not in the sky, but in space, because it's just faulty technology.
Yeah, like a Cybertruck. Like, it seems like all he does is build faulty technology, if you will. Like, that's all he seems capable of. So you're right, it could be another fallen satellite. Maybe not of his, just a fallen satellite in general. We really don't know what it is, but it's strange and bizarre that the FAA was like, we don't know what it is, which is why it's in this, episode of this Bizarre Ones podcast. And basically, that's all the stories we have for this particular episode of the Bizarre Ones podcast, if you will. If you like the podcast, make sure if you're listening to it on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. Or wherever you're listening to it, just make sure you tell us and let us know that you enjoyed this episode of the Bizarre Ones podcast. Sorry it took so long for us to release another episode. I know it's been a while since we released the episode 9. You're like, oh God, when's this episode 10 coming? And now it's finally here. We're having to do it through a phone. I can't do it with the laptop that we were doing it through because of the particular laptop not working, which is how we've done it in the past. And that's why we're particularly doing it through this, if you will. Like, we plan to have episode 11 and 12. There's 2 more episodes of this podcast before we rest for a while on doing any episodes. And then starting up next year, we will have more episode of the Bizarre Ones podcast, if you will. Again, like, we pre-record it, and we have to find time where we all have days off. See, the thing is I, if you will, I work at a convenience store, and I work the graveyard shift.
And see, the thing is Kai works the graveyard shift, right, at his convenience store. And the job that I work at, I work like the morning shift at the job I work at. So, like, it's totally 2 different shifts, if you will.
Exactly. So, like, Diamond Ash, the kind of job she works at, she works like, would be similar to, the shift that comes right after mine if we were working at the same place. And so it's kind of hard to find a time, if you will, where we all can do this episode. We have to find it to when we all have days off.
So, in addition to what Diamond Ash and Kai were saying, is okay, so Diamond Ash works like a morning shift, Kai works like a graveyard shift, and I also work at a convenience store, not the same convenience store that Kai works at, but the convenience store I work at, I basically do what would be the shift before his. And so, like he said, it's all about trying to find a time where we 3 have the same day off so we can record the podcast. And that's just really difficult to find, if you will.
Yeah, and so it's really hard to find a time where we all can do the podcast. And so that's what's taken so long for us to do the episodes of the podcast. Next year, for the second season of the podcast, when we start up again, there will be some episodes where Diamond Ash will be the only one in the episode of the podcast, just to kind of make it easier so we can release more episodes instead of having to wait so long. And there'll also be some episodes of the podcast, if you will, that only have Tanya Kitsune doing the episode, just to kind of make it easier so we can get more episodes released. We're not sure how many episodes are going to be in season 2 of the Bizarre Ones podcast. I mean, for season 1 of this podcast, there's 12. There might be just only 12 episodes, or there might be more. It just depends on our scheduling, if you will, of what we're able to do. Now, if you will, as I've said before, that that this podcast we don't do live at all, if you will. Like, we record it and whatnot. And the reason I bring that up, and you all can like tune out of the podcast now if y'all want. We're done with the stories and whatnot. This part you don't really have to listen to. But I don't know if you, so yeah. Anyways, so if you don't want to listen to this part, this is just us having a conversation, if you will, about, why we keep on mentioning the live, of why we don't, of us not doing the podcast live, and why I keep mentioning that, if you will, is, because the thing is a little while back on my, other, TikTok thing, because as you guys know, those that follow, my other content, if you will, I have another TikTok where I do reaction content. Diamond Ash, you and Tanya both have been on it, if you will, and, reacting to some of the content, if you will. Yeah.
I know you have that other TikTok, and so yeah, I know about that. Why do you bring that up?
So the thing is as you know, with my reaction content, I mainly react to convenience store clerk stories, or retail stories, but the majority of the content on that TikTok page is LGBTQ content. And if y'all like that, and you want to see the reaction content, I'll leave that in the description of the episode of this podcast, so y'all can all check that TikTok out and the YouTube page where that content goes. But I do LGBTQ content, and I did this one particular reaction to an old photo where somebody was like, yeah, they're just friends, they're just soldiers, right? And these particular two soldiers were like literally making out. And then this person commented with some transphobic, homophobic kind of content and whatnot, if you will. And the particular person that, commented, not only were they transphobic and homophobic, if you will, but they also believed that Saddam Hussein did nothing wrong and were a North Korean sympathizer and thought North Korea was a great place to be.
Wait, you're kidding me, Kai. So this person thought North Korea was an okay place and wants to live in North Korea, and that Saddam Hussein, who literally gassed his own people, was like a decent person?
Yeah, that's exactly what the person thought, and they thought they had the right to, attack my content, if you will, and sit there and say that, the particular thing I was talking about was not two people making out, and that it was something of a fraternal kiss, if you will. And I think I would know the difference between a fraternal kiss and a kiss between lovers. And so anyways, I blocked the person, didn't want anything to do with them. They continued on in their they tried to say that they weren't transphobic and homophobic because they were trans. And the thing is that is not true at all. You can be trans, you can be transgender and a person that is gay or lesbian and still be transphobic and homophobic. That doesn't make you not bigoted just because you're of a marginalized group.
So I just wanted to add something to what you're saying. Yeah, you're right. Just because there are plenty of trans white women that are racist as fuck. They'll say the most racist, vile things. I mean, and not only that, like you said, is just because you're trans doesn't mean you're not bigoted. I mean, look at Blair White and Caitlyn Jenner. Both of them are trans women, but they themselves are very bigoted and very hateful, and both are Donald Trump supporters. So like you said, that doesn't automatically make you not, bigoted. And not only that, but this person's like, oh, I'm a trans woman, but I support Saddam Hussein, who is anti-LGBT, and I support North Korea, which is a regime that is very anti-LGBT. It's like you're supporting a regime that would want you dead.
Oh, exactly. And so anyways, I blocked this person from being able to see my content. I blocked them everywhere on all social media. And they proceeded to accuse me of saying, oh, you claim you do your podcast live. Because I guess apparently they stumbled upon this podcast, right? Which is why I bring it up in this podcast to talk about it. They're like, oh, you claim to do your podcast live. And it's like, what? They're like, yeah, you claim to do your podcast live, but if you listen to the podcast, you can tell that it's not live.
The thing is, Kai, I don't remember any of us saying that this podcast was live. At no point have we ever claimed this podcast is live. Why would we claim the podcast is live? Why would this person think that you have to do a podcast live? There are plenty of people that don't do podcasts live. I'm completely confused. This isn't radio. This is a podcast. It's an audio thing. I guess it's similar to radio, but never at any point did we ever say it was like live. I mean, sometimes we actually record this podcast in segments, if you will, in order to get it done, and that's why sometimes it takes so long, if you will. So why did this person accuse you of that? You've never at any point, never have you, Tanya, or Dr. Anarchy, which is now Ms. Anarchy because she transitioned, have any of us said that we do this podcast live?
Yeah, we've never said that this podcast is live. I don't do this podcast live. I wouldn't want to do this podcast live because a lot of times we have to stop, recording. Like in this particular podcast, like I had to walk away from the phone and whatnot through the phone call because at the time I had to go use the restroom. And I mean, there's plenty of times that Tanya and Ash had to walk away from the phone because they had to use the restroom or they had to go get something to eat or something to drink and whatnot real quick, and we stopped. So we wouldn't be able to do this live because there'd be just so many freaking breaks into the thing. And so that's the reason we kept mentioning. That's the reason I told this particular story real quick, that happened, of, if you will, so you all would understand why we keep on saying, about not doing this podcast live, just so you all would understand the particular thing, if you will. Like they said, Diamond Ash said, is Dr. Anarchy, has done this podcast with us, and Dr. Anarchy is not referred to Dr. Anarchy anymore, but she's known as Ms. Anarchy because she recently transitioned, if you will. She doesn't live in the United States anymore. She lives in Canada with her both of her fiancés, if you will. And so they live in Canada. And so I'm not sure if Miss Anarchy will be able to do an episode with us, if you will, of the podcast again. At the moment, it'll be me, Diamond Ash, and Tanya that will be running the podcast and doing episodes, if you will. But we really enjoy the fact of y'all listening and to the podcast, if you will. And the reason we've tried to have conversations in this with each other is to make it seem more personal. We're still trying to find our groove, if you will, in the podcast of, to give it that personality, to give it that feel, to make it sure that it doesn't sound like we're reading from a script. Because the thing is,
and it sounds like sometimes we're reading from a script. And, the thing is, Kai, sometimes it does sound like it because we are. And so we're trying to make it more personable, like Kai said, to where when y'all listen to it, you're like, oh, okay, they're more than just people reading from a script. They're people that are talking to us. And so we're trying to make it more personable and more relatable to where we are like having a conversation and communicating between us as the podcasters and you as the audience.
Exactly. Like what she said is we're trying to make it to where it's more personable, it's more personal, and it's just not boring us reading a thing in the script and you're like, oh God, when are they going to stop? And we're still working and trying to find our way of how we're going to do this podcast to make it more pleasant for y'all to want to actually listen to the podcast and actually want to communicate with us.
And so, we want to have it to where you actually want to listen to it and it doesn't sound like that boring history teacher that you had back in the day when you went to school, or for those of you that are still going to school, because we're not. We're like, in our 30s and 40s and way past that point of our lives. But for those of you that are still, going to school and whatnot, it's like we don't sound like your boring history professor. We sound like something that you would actually want to listen to. And that's what we're trying with this podcast, is trying to make it to where we find who we are as podcasters, because this is like our first podcast that we ever started. We haven't done podcasts before this.
Yeah, exactly. Like we haven't done podcasts. Like I do have other podcasts, if you will, but I mean, this is like the first podcast that actually has had more than one episode, if you will. And I really haven't done much of the podcast in either as Diamond Ash or Tanya. And that's what we're trying here. So please be patient with us as we work this out and try to find our groove of doing the podcast, if you will. So in the description, if you will be all the links and whatnot for our links, and also the links to the articles, if you will. So you can check out the articles and check, our sources of where we, was talking about the stories that you heard in this particular, episode of the podcast, if you will. We still have 2 more episodes episode 11 and episode 12 coming, so stay tuned. We will have those episodes released, and then of course that'll be all the episodes for this year. And then next year we will finally start season 2. I'm not sure exactly when we're going to start the season 2, but we are working on the scripts for those as well, and those will come when we're able to get around to them. So stay tuned for that and whatnot. And thank you for listening. As always, we appreciate it. And that's all we have for this episode. As always, stay bizarre. I've been your host, Kai.
And I've been your host, Diamond Ash.
And I'm your other host, Tanya Kitsune, and this has been another episode of Bizarre Ones. We appreciate you listening, and we hope to hear from you again or see you again for the next episode of Bizarre Ones.